And prior to that time, did you engage the White House in an effort to obtain these materials?
All kinds of engagements with our counsel and counsel.
I'm talking about
Justice Department and White House with our counsel over the last several months relative to the special counsel
this subpoena, Mr. Chairman. Did you engage with the White House at any time in the last several weeks since issuing this subpoena, the one you want to hold this witness in contempt for? Did you ever engage with the White House in an effort to accommodate, an effort to reach an agreement, an effort to prevent this from having to be litigated? Did you ever write any correspondence, make any call to the White House seeking to engage, seeking to get these materials that you're seeking from the author instead from the White House? Did you ever do that, Mr. Chairman?
Gentleman from California withdraws point of order who seeks recognition. Gentleman from California is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, much as I don't like certain parts of the Mazars decision, it clearly applies in this case, and the committee is required to engage with the White House in order to seek an accommodation over materials held by a private party, as they were in the Mazars case, and seek to resolve this with the White House. So I would ask unanimous consent that we enter into the record your correspondence to the White House.
Objection.
Seeking to engage them to resolve this. And I thank the chairman for not objecting. Can you produce that correspondence to the White House asking for accommodation on these materials you've sought by this subpoena?
First time they reached out to us was 2 days ago.
Yes, and of course the author expressed the concern that these materials may implicate interests of the executive. I think that was weeks ago. But having admitted without dissent your correspondence to the White House, can you produce that for us where you have sought an accommodation, where you've sought to work this out with the White House? Can you share that with us since that is now part of the record?
Well, I thought you had it. You wanted to enter it into the record.
I do. I presume that, knowing your responsibilities, you have sought to engage the White House. So,
Mr. Chairman, point of order.
Produce the
recognized for point of order.
I think a unanimous consent request to submit something to the record is where the person who's asking for the floor is the proponent of submitting information that member has. I don't believe it's appropriate to ask a unanimous consent request to engage in a colloquy over discovering information or obtaining information from another member of the committee.
Great, and that's why I said that no objection to the unanimous consent request. If the gentleman from California wants to talk about that and present it to us, God bless him. He's allowed to do it to his 5 minutes.
I would like clarification from the chairman. Does this mean that there is no correspondence from you to the White House seeking accommodation on this material?
We've had all kinds of correspondence with the White House on this broad subject relative to the Zwanitzer and the letter we got 2 days ago. We've not corresponded with the White House yet. If we will, we may. That's a decision we'll make.
And you have not corresponded with the White House seeking accommodation ever since the author who you are subpoenaing and seeking to hold in contempt articulated the view that there was executive interest and potential privilege over this material? You haven't sought to engage over the weeks since you received that communication?
We have not engaged with the White House since the letter on the 25th of this month, 2 days ago.
And prior to that time, did you engage the White House in an effort to obtain these materials?
All kinds of engagements with our counsel and counsel.
I'm talking about
Justice Department and White House with our counsel over the last several months relative to the special counsel
this subpoena, Mr. Chairman. Did you engage with the White House at any time in the last several weeks since issuing this subpoena, the one you want to hold this witness in contempt for? Did you ever engage with the White House in an effort to accommodate, an effort to reach an agreement, an effort to prevent this from having to be litigated? Did you ever write any correspondence, make any call to the White House seeking to engage, seeking to get these materials that you're seeking from the author instead from the White House? Did you ever do that, Mr. Chairman?
We're seeking documents from a private individual who, I might add, tried to destroy the evidence.
I guess the question is, I guess the answer is no.
Since 2 days ago.
The answer is no.
The answer is since 2 days ago, I'm not
asking the question about since 2 days ago, although nothing prevented
That's when they first raised the concern.
Nothing prevented you from writing a letter within the last 2 days or reaching out to the White House before this.
Now you want me to be clairvoyant and read the White House's mind and write a letter before they tell us something?
Nothing prevented you from seeking these materials from the White House.
California is known
for months, Mr. Chairman. For months.
I'm not a mind reader.
And I thank you for making a very clean record for any court that will look at this.
The gentleman from North Carolina said
an accommodation
months ago the White House could have raised the concern, and they didn't.
To obtain these documents. because your first move, of course, is to go right to contempt. Ironically, of course, for a chairman who was in contempt of his own subpoena.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
We're still waiting for you to testify and meet the obligations of your own subpoena, Mr. Chairman. But nevertheless, I appreciate you're making such a clean record for any court in this case that you have never sought an accommodation, never written to the White House, never called the White House, never had a communication with the White House in order to obtain these materials as part of an accommodation. Thank you for that very clean record for the court, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Who seeks recognition?
All right, I just watched that clip, and wow. You can feel what's really happening here if you're paying attention. Before we go any further, welcome back to Voice of Truth. If you're tired of the spin, tired of the double standards, and you actually care about the Constitution and accountability, hit that subscribe button right now. Smash the like button so this video gets pushed out, and drop a comment below telling me what you think about this exchange. Let's get into it. So we just watched Adam Schiff try to corner Jim Jordan over whether the committee formally sought an accommodation with the White House before moving forward with a subpoena and potential contempt. Now let's be honest about what's happening here. Schiff isn't defending constitutional principle. He's not suddenly worried about institutional harmony. This is the same man who spent years pushing narratives, running impeachment efforts, and weaponizing investigations when it suited his political goals. Now, suddenly, he's the guardian of process? What Schiff is trying to do in this moment is build a legal shield for a private individual by hiding behind procedure. He keeps invoking the so-called need for accommodation and referencing the precedent from the Trump-era Mazars case. But here's the key difference. That case involved President Donald Trump directly. This situation involves a private individual. That matters. Jordan makes it clear they were seeking documents from a private citizen, not from the executive branch, not from the Oval Office, a private individual. Schiff keeps trying to blur that line to make it sound like the committee had some constitutional obligation to run everything past the White House first. Why? Because if they can delay, they can stall. If they can stall, they can bury it. If they can bury it, the American people never get the truth. Schiff keeps pressing. Did you write a letter? Did you call? Did you seek accommodation weeks ago? But listen carefully. The privilege concern was formally raised only 2 days before that hearing. 2 days. And now we're supposed to believe Jordan was required to be clairvoyant? That's the word Jordan used, and it's spot on. Our committee chair's now expected to read minds inside the executive branch before anyone even claims privilege. This is classic Washington maneuvering. Create a procedural fog. Argue technicalities. Hope the courts drag it out for months or years. Meanwhile, the public forgets what the investigation was even about. And then Schiff makes that little jab at the end about contempt. That wasn't about law. That was political theater. That was a soundbite for cable news. But here's the bigger issue most Americans don't see. For years, conservatives have watched investigations move lightning fast when they target Republicans. Subpoenas, raids, contempt threats, wall-to-wall media coverage. Yet when oversight turns toward executive power aligned with Democrats, suddenly we need months of accommodation, extended dialogue, delicate correspondence, and endless process. The double standard is what drives people crazy. Now let's talk about the role of the House Judiciary Committee. Its job is oversight. Real oversight, not symbolic oversight. If there's reason to believe documents are relevant and lawful to request, the committee has authority to pursue them. That's part of checks and balances. Schiff is trying to recast oversight as harassment. And notice something else. Jordan mentioned ongoing engagement with counsel and even discussions involving the Department of Justice over broader matters. So, it's not like there was zero communication happening in general. But Schiff wants a very specific paper trail at a very specific moment because he's thinking about future litigation, not transparency. When Schiff says, "Thank you for making a clean record for the court," that tells you everything. This isn't about facts. It's about setting up legal delay. As a right-wing patriot, here's my take. Oversight should not be paralyzed by political games. If executive privilege is legitimately invoked, fine, assert it clearly and defend it. But don't retroactively claim the committee should have assumed privilege before it was even formally raised. that flips the Constitution on its head. The legislative branch doesn't operate at the pleasure of the executive branch. It doesn't have to pre-clear every subpoena just in case someone might someday claim privilege. That's not how separation of powers works. And let's be clear, when Democrats were running aggressive investigations during the Trump years, they were not preaching patience and accommodation first. They moved aggressively. They pushed hard. They subpoenaed broadly. Now the shoe is on the other foot. This whole exchange shows the difference in philosophy. One side says, investigate, pursue the documents, enforce the subpoena. The other side says, slow down, consult endlessly, anticipate hypothetical privilege claims before they exist. If you believe in strong congressional oversight regardless of party, then the standard should be consistent. And that's what frustrates everyday Americans watching this. They see the maneuvering. They see the talking points. They see the procedural traps. But they also see that when it's politically convenient, the rules seem to change. So here's my question to you. Do you think Schiff was defending constitutional process, or was he laying groundwork to shield allies and delay accountability? Drop your thoughts in the comments. If you appreciate straight-up analysis without the corporate media spin, make sure you subscribe to Voice of Truth right now. Hit that like button to help the algorithm fight back against the mainstream narrative. And share this video with someone who still believes Washington operates on equal rules for both sides. Because if we don't demand consistency, we'll never get accountability. And accountability, real accountability, is what this country desperately needs.